I'm excited to be here. I'm excited anytime Kevin asks me to talk, although I feel completely out of my area because I am a health researcher and not in the tech space as much. But he said, like, hey, we need to know, like, on human behavior, what would you like to present on? And I said, well, let's talk about what is going to be required in the fire service. What does the research say is going to be required in the fire service to actually do some of this technology adoption? Raise your hand if you saw something this morning that you were like, oh my God, that's amazing. Raise your hand if you thought, oh my God, the fire service is never going to be able to implement this. Right. Because there were so many amazing things, right? Like I was watching that, I was like, holy shit. But then I thought, like, how many departments do that? Or how many departments can do that? Or what are the chances that we're gonna be able to do wide scale adoption of this? Like if every fire department in the country used the tech that was just presented here today, who would disagree that it will create a safer, more efficient, and healthier fire service? Like you can't debate that, right? But we have it, it's here, and are we gonna use it? So I started putting the presentation together, and this is one I haven't done before. And I started to go in kind of like a deep, dark hole. I don't know if it just like despair is in the air right now, but I was like, God, like this is gonna be a really depressing 20 minutes of like, we're all screwed. We're all screwed, nothing's gonna happen, nothing's gonna change. And I decided, because I'm really working on being an apocalyptimist, so optimistic, no matter how shitty things seem like they're going to be, they're gonna be turned out, we're gonna be optimistic about it. So I started looking at, all right, take a step back, Sarah. Let's be a little bit more positive, and let's think about what we do know and what the data says about diffusion of innovation. You might be familiar with the normal curve here, right? So everything really falls on a normal curve. If you ask perceptions, if you measure people's height, what you'll see is you've got a handful of folks, about 2.5% that are on one end, that are really short. You got the same on the other side that are really tall, and in the middle, everything falls along the normal curve, right? Interestingly, in science, when we say something is statistically significant, it's because we know that if you ask people any question at random, their answers will fall on a normal curve. So when we say something statistically significant, it means that there is only a 5% chance that that answer is by chance. So if it falls within that last 5%, that means it's statistically significant. That means that we've really found something, because it's not likely by chance, because everything's by chance, right? So that was so nerdy, wasn't it? And I love being in a room full of nerds who were talking about large language learning models and all these. I'm like, oh, these are my people. When we look at what we know about the diffusion of innovation, it also falls in a normal curve. So if you look at the theories of the diffusion of innovation, particularly as it relates to technology, but also as it relates to other things like health and wellness or any of the other things that we're talking about, you're gonna have innovators. So these are the people that are at the leading edge. They're always out looking for like, what should we be looking at next? It's about 2.5% of the population on a normal curve. Surprise, you are an innovator. You picked today, you're like, I could be playing in the cadaver lab next door. I could be reading smoke. I could be fighting. I'm gonna go to the tech summit, because you're an innovator. You're looking for those things. And that's about 2.5% of the population. It's not that much. Early adopters is about 13.5%. So these are the people that once the innovators have gone like, let me tell you about this amazing thing that we have, the early adopters are like, tell me more. I would like some more information on that, and I might buy in. Early majority is this 30 to 34%. It's the middle part. And the interesting thing is, if you look at that black line, that's when you look at where the market share. So when things are really gonna take off. Once you get the early adopters on board, they get the early majority on board. Early majority, finally those late majority folks are like, all right, it's been around for a minute. For me, it was like, so the iPhone might be a thing. So I bought one. iPhone 6 was, I think, out when I finally bought, because funny story, I'm an early adopter on health research and all things health in the fire service. I am such a late adopter on technology. I'm horrible at it. I have to look to my family. I'm like, so wait, what is this we're doing? It's called the internet? Tell me more. We've got the laggards. So this last 16%, This is the group, and I think sometimes, in fact, I was talking to one of the other presenters about, the variety of what we see in the fire service over nearest. People who are not even putting things on paper yet. We're going to have laggards, and we can't waste our time and energy on getting buy-in from the laggards. We don't even want to waste our time and energy of getting in the late majority, right? When we look at who we need to start impacting and affecting with the innovations, you're an innovator, so start looking for the early adopters. We don't have to jump to the laggards. We don't have to jump to the late adopters, because we're going to let them be influenced by the people right before them. Has anyone read the book, The Tipping Point? Fantastic book, and I highly recommend it when you start to get depressed about the fact that all this stuff is taking so long in the fire service. There's that saying, 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. Now, I will say, I think we're making a lot of gains in a lot of areas. There is a technology summit at FDIC competing with a cadaver lab and reading smoke, and the room is this full. Fantastic news, right? But what Malcolm Gladwell did a good job of was talking about that there are different people that diffuse innovation, and you need all of them. So if you look at his kind of 3 classifications, the law of few, we don't have to get the laggards and the late adopters. We've got to identify where we play into this as early adopters, and we got to build from there. So we've got the connectors, the people who know a lot of people. Billy Goldfeder once said, you're only 2 phone calls away from anyone in the fire service. And if you've got Billy's cell phone number, you're really only 1 call away from anyone in the fire service. Anytime someone calls me and they're like, oh, I've got this most amazing tech, I'm like, you need to talk to Kevin. Because I don't know who you need to talk to, but Kevin will tell you who you need to talk to. So it's all about, these are the people who, if you reach out to them, can connect you within 1 to 2 phone calls, and that's an important role to have, right? But there's also the mavens, and I would venture to guess that most of the people in this room are mavens. They're information brokers, trusted sources of information, trusted resource, where they're gonna know. You are looking at the technology and you're like, all right, here's the information I'm gonna gather on it. Here's the information that is useful. Here's the information that's not gonna be useful. So you're the people when I come to you and go, so this iPhone, it's sticking around for a bit. My sister is definitely a maven. She knows everything about any technology coming out. She loves it. So she was the first person she's like, oh my God, Sarah, do you see that car there? It's called a Tesla. There's only one in Kansas City. I can't believe it's here. And I'm like, what? What? And she's like, no, this is gonna be big. If Maggie says it's gonna be big, you invest in it. Because she's a maven of information, notwithstanding all the things going on. Like, I hope you didn't invest given what's going on right now, but you see it as an illustrative point that I'm making. But you also have the salesperson. Salesperson is Tom Jenkins. You would buy ice if you were an Eskimo from Tom. Like, I was listening to his presentation this morning, and I'm like, God, I'm totally signing on to Nearest. Like, this is the future. This is gonna change the fire service. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not a firefighter and I don't have a fire department. So I can't sign on to Nearest, but I'm so excited about what he's doing. And partly the salesperson is important because it's the person that gets you excited about it. They're so passionate about it. So as a maven, if we really want to impact change in the fire service, we got to connect with these other people. And I think it's fantastic that we're in this room having the conversations with the other mavens. But if we really want to impact change, we got to start connecting with the salespeople who can get passionate and get it out there, and the connectors who have the people that you can talk to, because those are the trusted sources, right? So we can do it. We can. So what other factors do we need to consider when we look at implementing tech? The stickiness factor. It's got to be something that's memorable, that's high impact, and that's worthy of repeating. Something that makes sense. Something that isn't just a one and done incident. We've got to have stuff that we have to have tech that's going to have multi-uses and that we can use in more than one way. So stickiness factor needs to be high, and the power of context. Sometimes an idea is fantastic. It's the best tech. It's the best, most innovative, forward-thinking thing, but maybe its time just hasn't come yet. Like, how many people before Dr. Lori got up and said, like, we are making Nearest happen, sat around the firehouse and went like, maybe this older system needs to be fixed, needs to be replaced. Well, if you said that 20 years ago, you would have no traction. It was the perfect time with the perfect people in place to pull the perfect levers to make that happen. So I think we have to keep power of context in mind, because it can get disheartening when you're sitting here and I'm watching the drones fly over and thermal imaging cameras. I'm like, God, imagine how many lives that could save. Why is everyone not doing that? Because maybe it's just not the perfect time. Maybe we're still in that early adopter phase. Maybe we haven't moved far enough along on the spectrum. So don't give up hope. So look how hopeful I am. This is just a whole presentation full of hope and joy. And I even had a flower. My favorite early adopters. So I started to put this presentation together, and I was pulling the literature, and I was doing lit review. I was talking to firefighters, and I'm like, all right, what can I look? Barriers, facilitators, examples. And then I had, and I'm not saying that I just did my presentation yesterday. I am not saying that at all. But yesterday I had coffee with my dad, and it actually made me change my presentation. Because my dad is the ultimate in early adopters. It's where my sister gets it from. It missed me as a gene. He was a fire chief for a dozen years, and then bought a training tower company, builds fire training towers. And he as a fire chief, was always looking for the next thing. Always looking for, like, what can we bring in? He's ultimate early adopter on this stuff. And he was telling me a story about something. He went to a county meeting. He's like, oh, I still remember it. It was the funnest conversation. So Kevin, thank you for facilitating that with my dad. And he laughed when I said I was doing a tech presentation, because he's like, you and technology? I'm like, no, I'm going to talk about the science of early adoption. But I said, I was like, I need some examples. He's like, oh, early 90s. I go to the basement. He goes, I still remember it clearly. I was in the basement of District 2, and I brought up this idea. And two of the guys there go, that's the dumbest idea you've ever had. Early 90s. He's like, as an early adopter, he was used to hearing shit like that, right? His idea, we should put an AED on every fire truck. Right? But at the time he said it, that's the dumbest idea you've ever had, Jahnke. Well, it turns out he was right. Guess what's on every fire truck? Guess what's written in NFPA standards now? Maybe not the dumbest idea you ever had. So what are the barriers? What does the barriers say in the literature? What were the key points that I got from my dad? Yesterday I was like frantically texting myself, which I'm sure there's a better way to do that, but I was texting myself key points to put in here. And some of them are obvious, right? Budget. So, and that was one of their things. Like, oh, it's going to be too expensive to do that. No one's ever going to use them. He said his department put AEDs on the truck, and within 3 days, they had their first save. There's also leadership buy-in. You've got to convince people. There are people even in leadership decision-making. Sorry, do I keep moving? There are people even in leadership positions and in decision-making who are late adopters or laggards, who are late majority. So they're going to be slow to make choices and slow to see the vision of these types of things. There's often communication gaps. Communication gaps about what we can do, about what we can't do, about what the benefits and drawbacks are. It's sometimes hard to get that information which I know in a room full of mavens, it's probably hard to think that through, because you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. We should do this. Definitely makes sense. Sometimes that's a hard message to get across, especially to someone with other competing priorities. Lack of awareness of what's available. There were things that I saw that I'm like, oh my God, I texted my dad and I'm like, you would love this presentation. There are things out there that they're doing in other countries, that they're doing even in the US, that people just aren't aware is going on. That I think we can have faster adoption if we're aware of it. And it can be intimidating, right? Like putting drones in, think of all the policies and procedures. Think of all the ways that could go wrong. Absolutely, a lot of work to be done, but we can't not do it, right? Lack of knowledge about what's out there and lack of knowledge of how to operationalize it. Like I hadn't thought about needing the presentation on it being an FAA issue. I hadn't even thought about that. Well, of course that's an FAA issue. You saw that one drone that almost went down. And I think the hardest part is you have to try again when it comes to technology. Some stuff is amazing, it isn't gonna work. Some stuff is amazing and is gonna work. So, advice from Bill. Oh, try again. Notice on my AI-generated thermal imaging camera, the firefighter is pointing the thermal imaging camera to himself. So that's the thing, right? Like it's not ever gonna be that first try when I typed in, give me a firefighter with thermal imaging camera. So we have to leave room for the fact that sometimes some of the things we're going to try are going to fail. So when I asked Dad, all right, what made you want to put an AED on the fire truck? What made you, he actually bought his first thermal imaging cameras from a decommissioned Navy ship because they weren't advertised to the fire service yet. So I said, how did you find those? And he goes, you got to look outside the fire service. You got to talk with people within the fire service, but you got to look outside because we don't already have all the answers. Some of those answers are coming from the outside. And I said, what else? And he goes, well, you have to engage with and keep up with science. And I was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing moment we've ever had because I love science and you love technology. But he does. It's like, you got to keep in mind what the data is saying. And you got to follow the data in terms of what's needed. You got to think through the pros and cons. You got to think that there are benefits. You got to think where there are drawbacks. And you have to have that prospective hindsight to think, what are you going to think? Oh, shit, I wish I would have thought of that. You got to plan ahead for that. And consider generalizability. If there is something that there is a very unique incident and you can't redo all of the tech within your organization for that one incident because that might never happen again. We got to think broader than that. We got to think about the generalizability of these solutions. And then consider repeatability. Sometimes shit just happens and there was no way we could have predicted it, right? That's okay, but we've got to be thinking through all the implications of that moving forward. And what we really need to be looking for is what makes the job easier, what makes it more efficient, and what makes it safer. Keep our eyes on the prize there. And then the armchair quarterback, he said, sometimes I said, wait, how do you do it now? And he's like, oh, I love to watch videos on YouTube and think about how I would have done it different or what technology solution is there. So I know that armchair quarterbacking gets kind of a negative, has a negative connotation, but that's the way we're going to start coming up with some of these solutions as well, right? And finally, don't be afraid of failure. Sometimes you will try he had some of the tech that they developed early on failed, and he had this one thing that was a tracking system for firefighters. Well, it failed. At the time, now guess what there are? Tracking systems and locator devices for firefighters. At the time, it just wasn't ready for it. The department wasn't ready for it. The organization wasn't ready for it. But we can't be afraid of failure, and we can't be afraid of, well, we should try that, and if it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean all tech is dumb. It just means that in this instance, maybe it's not the time, maybe it's not the tech. And that's all I got. My contact information is there, and I am under time by 2 minutes. Thank you.